So super interesting. I love those kind of videos. I'm a super visual learner, and that really helps you kind of wrap your head around. And if you weren't feeling privileged before this class, I hope you sure feel privileged after it. I mean, it will depend because I'm going to show you both ends of the spectrum. But even though the numbers are up considerably from one college grad 20 years ago out of 100 people to 7, I mean, if you're able to complete this course of study and your degree, you will be in the top 10 percentile of the world in privilege as far as education goes and all the benefits that come with that. So even though it's something we kind of take for granted here in the United States, or maybe you resent having to be forced to go to school, it is quite a privilege when we look at the worldwide spectrum. Another thing I hope you notice, and he didn't really focus so much on the economics, a little bit, but even though the United States only has 5% of the population, if not less, we consume over 25% of the world's resources. Whether that's electricity, food consumption, petroleum products. I mean, think of how many automobiles you or your families have. I mean, my family, I've got like 2 cars not running out in the front yard, 2 cars that are running in just one household. I mean, I have 4 vehicles. In a lot of countries, just having 1 vehicle would be an incredible status or wealth. Sorry, I got a tickle. All right, so the way the book is defining inequality is disproportionate allocation of culturally valued material and social rewards. So these could be things like wealth, whatever your society determined was wealth, whether that was cattle, land, capital, money, or status, like ranking or privilege that comes in society. So those are 2 different ways to measure inequality. Main areas are wealth, power, prestige, and respect. Wealth, power, prestige, and respect. So that's kind of what they're measuring in society. Morton Fried categorized 3 types of inequalities. And so these are 3 types of societies. And the first one we're going to talk about is an egalitarian society. And an egalitarian society, there is a great deal of equality among the members. And mostly we find these among tribal societies, smaller groups, bands, clans, etc. Here's 3 characteristics of an egalitarian society. One is there's frequent movement. So these are often nomadic societies where they travel with the seasons, with their herds or whatnot. And we mentioned that already when we were talking about foraging. When you're in a hunter-gatherer society, you can't really hoard or collect a lot of wealth because you have to pack it all up and move it every few weeks or months. So everyone kind of has that equality in that you're only taking the bare minimum of what you need. You're not building bigger houses or having a treasure house full of your gold and silver and jewels. You're only keeping what you can carry and what's useful. Secondly is reciprocal sharing. And I gave the example of if you kill a bull elk, you can't eat all that meat before it goes bad or carry that much meat back to camp by yourself. So it makes sense to share that with other members of the hunting party and then other members of the tribe or group. And then the third part is there's a huge degree of mobility and freedom within these egalitarian societies. I guess maybe the closest we could get in our culture would be maybe like people that live like highway gypsies, kind of people that live in their mobile homes or trailers, or the snowbirds. But even the snowbirds usually have a permanent residence and they're just migrating seasonally with the weather. But at least in their migratory things, if you've ever been to one of those RV parks or where people are seasonally camping, there is a great deal of equality in what people have, the equipment they share. It's pretty uniform. All right, the next group. Oh, and the way I like, you can even do these with like geometric shapes. And so I would define an egalitarian society as like a circle. And you have different members, but you're all equal around the circle. But depending on what's going on, say a baby's being born. Well, maybe the midwife now comes to the center and she leads in birthing that baby because that's her field of expertise. But after the baby's born and the mother's okay, she moves back to her place in the circle. Maybe it's time to change camps. Well, the person who has a good sense of direction or memory, knows the routes, knows the dangers, they come and they lead to that new destination. But once you get there, they resume their place in the circle of equality with everyone else. Maybe you're being threatened by another tribe or by a predator or something like that. Well, then someone who's brave or skilled at war or fighting might come to the center and lead your group through that crisis, through that time. But it's not like you have a permanent chief or king or president that's always in control regardless of the situation. You have different specialists come in and take the lead depending on the circumstances, and then they return to their place in the circle. Super appealing. I love that idea of kind of like, it's like a body, right? Where you have many parts and then different ones come to the forefront depending on what the need is. The next group I would make in the shape of squares, and this is called rank societies. And so in the base down here at the bottom, you have the bulk of the people, but then out of the people arises certain positions of power and authority. So you could draw like little squares coming up out of the big square of the collective. And in a rank society, a limited number of high-ranking social positions are associated with wealth and power. Often, however, the higher prestige does not also mean more wealth, for it is often distributed among the people. And this distinguishes a ranked from a stratified society. And that's the one we're going to do next. And what they mean by that is, my favorite example of a ranked society in this sense would be the Potlatch cultures. Potlatch, kind of like potluck, but latch. And of like the Native American tribes of the Pacific Northwest, the ones we associate with like totem poles and that sort of thing. Well, in these societies, if you want to rise in prestige and privilege, the way to do it is to throw an enormous party for the rest of the tribe. And during that party, you give gifts to everyone else in the tribe. So it's a way of redistributing the wealth. And so these powerful families or clans, in order to maintain their prestige, give food, blankets, tools, fishing hooks, axe heads, whatever to the people in the tribe. And by giving those gifts, it raises their prestige, but it costs them in personal wealth to get the prestige, if that makes sense. But I also love this model. It's another way to keep a greater deal of equality, because when people do get to a position of respect and power and wealth, in order to maintain that privilege, they have to distribute some of that to the rest of the group. Any questions on these first two groups so far? Okay, the third group would be like, yeah, go ahead, Rhea.
I was a little confused as to how the square shape worked with the rank society. I got a little lost on.
Okay, so if you drew like a, I'm sorry I don't have a whiteboard to draw for you, but if you just drew a big square or rectangle at the bottom and then drew like little lines coming up out of it, because these people that are elevated are coming from the group. And they come up and then they maintain that place as long as they are held in high esteem and honor. But part of why they're held in high esteem and honor is because they're distributing their wealth back into the group. But they could lose their status and re-emerge back into the group. So it's not permanent. You can rise and fall in a stratified society. In a ranked society. The next group is called stratified societies. And these I would put like a pyramid, where at the top of the pyramid you have concentrated wealth and power, And then down here at the base of the pyramid, you have the bulk of society. But you have like a hierarchy going all the way up to the top. So we have the circular egalitarian, the square ranked, and then the stratified, like a pyramid. And in stratified societies, there's marked inequalities in wealth, power, and prestige. Secondly, there is unequal access to resources. The few control the resources or means of production. Third, unequal access is usually inherited. There's little social movement in stratified societies. And this brings us to the well, let's stop there for a second. So if we just looked at San Diego Christian College with those three models, egalitarian, ranked, or stratified, which model do you think would represent the school? The way the school organization is laid out. Do you feel like you have equal access to privilege, to wealth, to power, to say so in the school? Or do you believe that there's people that are over you telling you what to do and how to do it?
Well, question, are you talking about the business side of the school or like the student learning side of the school? Because that could be completely two different scenarios. Because like,
do you think it's two different models?
Yeah, because I mean, being a student worker and being a student here, I see, I mean, yeah, I work for the school, but I also, you know, there's not a lot of, my word doesn't have a lot of power to how things are done. Like, yeah, I can give an opinion if I think something should be done differently, but just because I have the opinion doesn't mean they're going to have to listen to me.
No. So what kind of society is that?
Well, you've kind of been
ranked, or stratified?
I'm not exactly sure, in all honesty, but I just would definitely say that it's definitely two.
Is power shared by all, or is it concentrated at the top?
Concentrated at the top, definitely.
Yes. I mean, it's so blatantly stratified, it's not even funny. If you've ever seen like a administration chart or something laid out, you have up at the top, you have the board of trustees, which can hire or fire the president. So our board would be at the top, and then we would have the president, and then we would have like the CFOs or CEOs, and then we would have all the VPs, and then under the VPs, we would have all their departments and managers, and whether that's on the staff side or the faculty side. And on that pyramid, I'm like way down here. Okay. But guess where you guys are? You're off. You can't even see where you are. You're off the screen. That's how low you are in that stratified society. Even though it's your money, it's your time, it's your investment that keeps the school going, you do not have a lot of say in the direction, the mission statement, all those things. Now, I guess you could say, well, I don't believe in your views or your value or your structure, and you could take your money and your business and your education elsewhere. But I think what you'll find is education is highly stratified, and especially the higher you climb, it gets more rarefied. What it takes to get a PhD is so involved that it comes with a lot of privilege and respect, and even monetary compensation. And that's part of the way it is. And people get really interesting in academia. I mean, you are judged by your degrees. A BA is like, minimum, right? But if you want to even be part of the conversation, you're at least going to have to get a master's, or if you want to teach. But then if you want to be respected as an expert in the field or someone who's contributing, you have to get a PhD. And like, I can't even be a department chair at our school without a PhD, which I don't have. And so it blocks me of I can only climb so high on the pyramid unless I get more advanced degrees, if that makes sense. So that's the way a stratified society works. Now, there's different types of stratified societies. There's class systems, which is what we have here in America, and there's caste systems. And you're probably familiar with the caste system in India, which has been made illegal, but everyone still knows what caste they are. And part of that caste, you are born into it. Same with class. You are born into a class, but in a class society, there is more movement. You could lose your status and go from an upper class to a lower class, or you could be born into poverty or a lower class, and through hard work, effort, maybe some luck, you could break into the upper classes. And so there is movement possible in class societies. In a caste society, at least in Hinduism, the only way to move up into the next caste is to die and be reincarnated in your next life into that next rung on the ladder. The only exception I know is women's dharma is tied to their husband. So if a low caste woman married a high caste man, she would get to leapfrog up to his status. But more romantic would be, say, a high caste woman fell in love with a low caste man, she would find her fortunes down where he was. And so, I mean, that would make a good love story, right? I'm sure families wouldn't be happy either way if you're marrying outside of your caste, but it does happen occasionally. All right, go ahead.
Well, something I just wanted to say about SJCC and the stratified society is that one of the big reasons why I chose to go to SJCC is because I felt that because we're a smaller school, my voice mattered more. I feel like a lot of other educational systems are very, very stratified to the point where there's no chance for you to have any input, versus SJCC, because we're still a growing school and there's still movement, you know, there are ways for you to be able to actually impact and change the culture of the school, change what's going on, talk to the leadership. And, you know, you're not going to be able to rewrite the mission statement or make the final call on a big decision, obviously, as a student. But there's a lot more input, I would say, in our schools, still stratified society, than very, very pretty much
Fair enough.
any other I personally know about. Our school has the most input coming
in. That is true. Because of our smaller side, you can be known. You can actually know the people that are higher in rank from you. And a lot of places you can't even have access, right? They're blocked by secretaries or aides or administrative assistants. And you can't even get an audience with those people in the top tiers. But just think about your different classes and your different professors and how they run their classrooms. And even the mentality, right? You have some that want to be called doctor or professor or whatever because they're about that. I mean, they worked for it, they want it, they want that recognition. And then you have others that are, you know, call me brother Bob or sister Jane or whatever. And it's a much more egalitarian family sort of feel. And even at our little school, we have that huge spectrum. But I did not ask you, I did not do a poll before class like, hey, how would you all like to do the assignments? Or what do you think would be an equitable way of grading? Or each week, a different one of you is going to teach the class because I want to hear your expertise on the topic. There was none of that. I simply, like a petty tyrant, sitting in my classroom throne, decided what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, how much of it we were going to do, and you were going to have to live up to my standards and expectations. I didn't take a vote. I didn't take a poll. I just said, this is how it is, and this is how you get an A, and this is how you don't. But that's stratified. That's not egalitarian. Even though I'm a pretty personable guy, I'm not running an egalitarian classroom. Okay. All right. We have systems like apartheid, which was finally banned in South Africa, where you had a white minority that had the power and privilege over the Black and colored majority. And colored in South Africa is a specialized term usually implying mixed race, or it can also mean people from the subcontinent of India are often referred to. There's a lot of Indian immigrants into South Africa, and I believe that's who's being referred to as colored, as opposed to black would be the native South African. And then, of course, you had the white and the English and the Dutch settlers earlier on colonizing South Africa. It was very similar in the Deep South. That was another system of like apartheid or caste system. You were simply born into slavery or you were born into freedom. And there was a period of time before the Civil War where you could not even attain freedom. You couldn't buy your freedom. You couldn't be set free. If you were born a slave, that was your fate. Your only option was to flee, escape, to leave the southern United States. I'm going to save the more religious aspects of the caste system for our next talk when we talk about different religions in the world. But I do want to mention this one group. It makes me think of Jumanji, but it's called Jajmani, Jajmani, Jajmani. And in this Jajmani relationship in these tribal groups in India, it's an exchange of goods and services. And so it's super egalitarian. So think again about that like circular society. And there's a great deal of equality. But say I'm a teacher, right? So I would teach all the children or adults that wanted to study with me in the community. So say it's a community of 100 people. I might have 100 students. You know, probably not. I'm probably only going to be teaching a third of them or a fourth of them, but I'm available. That's my job. That's what I contribute to society. I'm a teacher, but I have to eat. And so instead of getting a salary or an income, people might bring me a chicken when they come to class, or a bag of rice, or some vegetables from their garden, or some milk from their cow or goat. And that is their payment. And so I'm eating based on what the farmer or the dairy person or the poultry person is doing for a living. They're sharing part of their produce with me, and I'm sharing part of my knowledge with them. But I have to wear clothes, so I might go to the tailor and say, hey, would you mind getting me a new outfit? And he doesn't charge me. That's just what he does. And he makes clothes for everyone in the village. And the same thing. The guy that's raising chickens gives chickens. The guy who's raising rice gives rice. The person who's has milk goats is sharing milk. If I need a pair of shoes, same thing. If I need protection from the police, same thing. If I need a doctor, same thing. And I just love the beauty of this relationship. I don't think we could do this in a country the size of the United States, but in a small community, I think you could actually do something like this, where it's more like the barter system and you're exchanging goods and services, but it takes a mentality of you are the community. I mean, it's like a family, right? How you give and receive from each other because you're all in it together. It's part of a group. You all rise or sink together. And so I think this could work in a small village or community. It just would become very difficult in a modern industrialized or post-industrial society where so much of our bartering and stuff is, we're not even using physical money anymore, right? It's all just electronic. I rarely even touch money. It's all just digitally transferred into my account. I never see it come in and it goes out the same way. It's all just swiping a piece of plastic, right? And it's convenient. I don't have to carry a truck full of chickens with me everywhere I go, but it also kind of separates me from that process, from that exchange of goods and services. So I just wanted you to be aware of that one, the Jajmani relationship. Okay, and the last thing I have to share for this is the theories of inequality. There's a functionalist theory, and I believe this theory, it's just looking at the way society functions, the way wealth is accumulated. There's and there's a conflict theory of wealth inequality. And the conflict theory is basically saying, look who benefits from inequality in society, and look who is controlling the way society is governed. Okay, so who has the means of production, the power and control, and then who is benefiting from an unequal society. Any questions on that before I go to my videos? All right, I'm going to stop the recording.